I always struggled with perfection. I felt like I always needed to be perfect. And so I was always showing up for some idea of what people wanted from me, whether it was my parents, more on that later. I'm so touched that I'm seeing so many faces. Some old, hey girl, some new, and just so honored to be able to share something that's been sort of brewing in my consciousness for a very long time now. And here I'm standing, and so many people have seen my journey from starting out and deciding to really show up and teach a well-being class and continue to serve my community with information about how we show up authentically and how we really show up for ourselves above all. So thank you. A round of applause for you guys for trusting me on this Saturday afternoon. You could be anywhere. You could have been at some outdoor and enjoying yourself. But here you are with me today. So let's get started. Some of you know me. I'm Nana Konamah. My name is kind of like on everything. So I'm Nana Konamah. Should I tell you? I feel like this is like a dating thing. I'm 31 years old. I like long walks on the beach. But no, I'm Nana Konamah, and I have something to say. And that thing that I have to say is that, you know, there are men in here. Hey, Cubby. But I think primarily I'm speaking from my experience as, you know, a Ghanaian woman who's also lived in America and now lives back in Ghana. There are so many roles we play, so many different spaces we have to show up in, and so many people we have to be in each of those spaces. And I always struggled with perfection. I felt like I always needed to be perfect. And so I was always showing up for some idea of what people wanted from me, whether it was my parents, more on that later, or society, or friends, or what people expect you to do. And if you grew up in a racial society like America, you're also dealing with the pressures of prejudice and having to be the only one. A lot of times being the only one in these spaces. So over the years, I realized that I had not really cultivated the art of showing up for myself. Who am I? What do I want? How do I want to operate in this world? And so I set out and I said, okay, so when I finally made it, and you're going to hear more about how it got to a place of me being able to say, this is kind of all I got, like me, how I've cultivated that. And I want to share that with you today. But I also want to just remind everybody that as much as I'm standing here and it says Masterclass, I'm not really here to teach. I'm really here to share my vulnerability. I'm really here to open up the space for all of us to be vulnerable together. Vulnerability can be hard, but I promise you this is a safe space, right? So let's make an agreement together that we are creating a safe space for one another to show up fully and be vulnerable with one another, right? If you agree, clap. So let's go ahead and get started. Boom, that's me. Anybody want to guess the age?
12.
Oh, yeah. I look old. I was 9. I was very tall. I was very tall for my age. So like I get you. So 9 years old. This picture is like a milestone in my life because this was the first picture day after moving to the States with my family at the age of 9. So this was like my sort of introduction into like Americanness or like American culture or whatever the case is. Showed up, my little 3-piece suit, took this picture. And it's very interesting because like there's this big smile on there, but I think the smile, behind the smile is sort of all that other stuff, right? Being in a new country, a new school, a new community, a new way of doing things, and really feel like I spent most of that year totally confused. Like, I'm just going to do what the other kids, like, I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing because I think that's how we make it and that's how we survive. Like, I'm going to find a way to fit into this space. So behind the smile is sort of like that, confusion. And you're 9 and kind of approaching like that awkward stage. And yeah, so let's keep this in mind. It's I show this first just to show you sort of like talk a little bit about my story and to just prepare you for where we're going. Because I think that nothing is as raw as like, if you all took out like your childhood picture right now, there's like raw emotion that comes with that picture because there's, what that picture looks like, but in that moment what you may have been battling. And it's very interesting. I love childhood pictures because there's a lot of innocence in those pictures. But then we look at it with the lens of who we are today and we're like, man, that was a tough year. And thinking back and thinking, I never really developed the tools to really adjust, right? And then you just keep showing up for everybody else in your life consistently. But before we get into the hard stuff, talk a little bit about myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Nana Konamah. I am an individual designing and crafting my life according to principles of authenticity. So I hope I can show up as much as possible as my truest, realest self. Hey, y'all gonna get what y'all get. Connecting with others through daily wellness, self-care, self-development, and personal growth practices. My background, I have an MPH, public health researcher, which is like a de facto, you're going to be a doctor person. So I went and did an MPH to try to continue my medical school process. Didn't much happen, but that's another story for another day. I'm a certified yoga instructor, 200 hours. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a chief innovator. My current position is chief innovations officer for a company that manufactures solar panels here in Ghana. Also, if you need me to slow down, you can because I tend to speak really fast. Anyway, hey Alma, I see you try to sneak in late. Hey girl. Brand development expert, business strategist. I'll keep going. My advocacy is around wellness and well-being. Women and youth in tech and innovations, building brands with purpose, mental health, and social justice reform. I am a proud, very proud, angry Black woman. So, yes, angry and Black and woman. I'll take it. So, what is nanakonamah.com? It's our platform. It's a health, wellness, lifestyle media community platform. We create content that's around our 4 core pillars of wellness, mental health, self-care, self-development, and lifestyle. And what we really want is to help individuals create the lives that they want. Cute little picture of me reading the book. I finally finished that book, by the way. It took me a really, really long time, but I got there. Essentially, our mission is to help people find their authentic selves. Because really, what else would you be, right? So let's get right to it. In 2013, I moved to Ghana after 15 years of spending my entire life in the East Coast of the United States. And I think that a lot of returnees experience is that we come with a very, dare I say, idealized idea of what it means to come home. We think that home is just sitting around waiting for us to come back to it and save it or something. I don't know. The arrogance, been there, recovered, we're good. And so we come and we're experiencing home from so many different angles. But, and not just being a returnee, I think life in Ghana can be very raw sometimes, and it's a very raw experience because you're really seeing things. For me, I feel like it was the first time I was really seeing things as they are. And so here's me. This is the first Friday of the first week I started working in Ghana. You can see how productive I was. So whole rack of selfies, cute, eyebrows done, I feel like, right? Cute pictures. No? Y'all don't feel that way? Okay. So I show this picture because I think this was the thick of my sort of internal sort of struggles. So here I was in Ghana feeling like I really needed to be a very specific kind of way. You know, I had moved back after many years in the States and really struggling with what it meant to be a Ghanaian woman, right? And so I show this picture because, like, it all looks good in the hood on the outside. But child, if I tell you what was going on in the inside, right? Utter confusion. So it's a combination of not really knowing who I was and what I appreciated about myself and not really accepting who I truly was. And probably just 25. I think 25 was just a mess. The age 25, not like the number. Not like Skybar, but like I think mid-20s. Like who is currently in your mid-20s? I don't want to scare you if you haven't reached 25 yet, but how was 25, y'all? If we're going to be completely honest. I couldn't be the only one. I feel like everybody who I asked that question, girl, how was 25? They're like, ooh. Right? So it was a combination of just like mid-20s angst, being in a different environment, you know, moving to Ghana initially, knowing that I wanted to do something different, but feeling like I need to validate all this money my parents had spent on these degrees. I had to validate it into something that was like useful, like, you know, wake up in the morning and like drive in traffic and like, you know, be part of the rat race. So this was my life. And there are people in this room who can attest to this, that this was literally what I was doing. So in the internal struggle of sort of like not having the boldness or at least like the self-acceptance to show up completely as who I wanted to be, I relied on perfection to get me through. Perfection was my medicine. So I'll wake up at 4 a.m., work out for 2-3 hours, go to work. Yeah, girl. My body was on point. However, 4 a.m., I work out for 2-3 hours. Then I would go to work all day and then work out for 2 hours after work again. So on average, I was doing 4 or 5 hour workouts. Now that I'm saying it to you guys and I'm seeing the facial reactions, I'm like, ooh, you probably should have done some inward reflection. And I lived a practically fasted life. So every other week, I was on a different juice fast. You remember that, Amma? She was one of the friends. She was one of the friends who was like, "You wake up at what time?" Okay, so what are you doing after work? The gym. What? Okay, so are you eating? And literally be like, "Hey, are you eating this week? Like, can we do lunch? Are you eating this week?" Literally, that was my friends had to ask me, "Are you eating this week?" Because I had this idea of perfection in my head that I had taken on for many, many years of living in, hey babe, sorry, living in America and, you know, just taking on a lot of ideas of what my body needed to look like in order to be perfect. We all know. And then social media shows up and there's these all other pressures, waist belts and stuff like that. My cousin left me a waist belt. I tried it. I promise you, a rib shifted. I'm not gonna lie. Something internally was not the same. I was like, so the pressures of what it means to be perfect. For me, I took it on like an external physical sense, right? So literally in a day, up at 4 a.m., work out 2-3 hours after work out another 2 hours. Like it was just like a cycle. to the point my friends had to actually ask me, okay, are we eating this week, girl? Because if so, that was my life. So despite doing all these things, I still found myself completely miserable, right? Like, it takes a lot of discipline, I guess, to wake up at 4 a.m. Discipline can be driven by positive and negative forces. It can. And for me, I'm not saying it was like a bad thing necessarily to work out or eat healthy or anything, but the intention behind it, this idea, what was clouding my judgment was the fact that I just thought I was never good enough. Never good enough. There was just always this like place I was trying to get to. Somehow could never get there. And I look at pictures now of, like, let's say, I never, even when I was slender back then, I never appreciated my body. Never. Today, I got a little thicker. And I was looking and I was like, man, what if I had actually, worn that tiny little skirt when I was back young and slender, because in my head, I had never reached perfect. And so I never even enjoyed what I had then. It was always some future point. Success to me, happiness to me, perfection to me existed in some future point. There was never a moment where it was now. I'm good now. I'm appreciative now. It was always what are some sentences we tell ourselves? Example, when I get that job, I'll be happier. When I lose a little weight, I'll be happier. When I finally get that six-pack. That was I was like, let me get that six-pack. And I'm going to stop. Yeah, once I get that six-pack, go shut it down. Like, my belly's going, even when I was there, I wasn't there. Like, it doesn't exist, right? So I had mastered the art of physical wellness, at least like being able to wake up and work out and all that stuff. And I realized it wasn't really about that, but more than that. But was not clearly facing the mental and emotional wellness, right? So, like in life, the party comes to an end. Like, all good things, what's the adage? All good things must come to an end. And so in 2015, the cracks began to show. And I was functioning really through a nervous breakdown. So I was still going to work, showing up in places, showing up for everybody else in my life except myself. So I was still doing the normal things, right? Going to work, showing up, being present, going to every program, being around. But like on the inside, I'm giggling. Sorry, when I get a little uncomfortable, I giggle. So on the inside, I'm just completely torn apart. Like, the unraveling is beginning to happen. Like, I feel like I'm spiraling, right? Like, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced this. You feel like you're spiraling. Like, it's like something is becoming undone, and it feels like, what can I latch onto? And all the things that I had latched onto in the past could not stick, right? So in the past, I had latched onto waking up at 4 a.m. and working out. Couldn't do that. Juice fast and like starving myself and like doing, putting myself through these really strict challenges, of like, some of the things I did, it was just, I look back on it, I'm like, wow, girl. But all of a sudden I couldn't. None of those things could stick. I could not sink my teeth into the habits I had picked up to help me feel stable, because it wasn't real. So I completely hit a wall. Like, it was like, have you ever seen kids running and like they don't see, it's like a terrible, but like it's like a glass pane, like the one behind us, and they don't really see it and they're just running, and what does it look like? An object in motion stays in motion until an opposing force stops it. It's literally boom, right? Heads banged up, you fall back, and it's like, oh my God. So in the middle of this unraveling, I thank God for this. A friend of mine had come to visit me. And I gave her a little bit of sort of like, hey girl, yeah, it's kind of not all good in the hood. You know, the head space, the heart space is a little confused. I'm a little off. And the irony is that she wasn't even advising me specifically. She was just saying how she had introduced a particular author to another mutual friend of ours who had gone through a similar situation. And I hadn't opened my mouth to say, you know, immediately I was like, oh, really? What was her name? Because I knew what was going on the inside. So she introduced me to the work of Dr. Brene Brown, who she talked about a couple of her books. She's like, you really need to check this lady out. Her research is around shame and authenticity and how shame gets in the way of authenticity. So I immediately got the ebook and, read a little bit. Then I kind of let life get in the middle of it. So I kind of put it to the side. And it was late November going into December 2015. And put the book to the side, thinking about my Christmas plans, like, yeah, I'm about to book this trip to Bali. I'm about to do my thing. And, and then, boom, I got so sick. Like, I felt like this illness was like a spiritual manifestation, like something metaphysical, like something from the inside out. Of not taking care of myself emotionally and mentally showed up physically. And so I got really sick, really, really sick. And while I was there, some days I was mad because I was like, dang, it's Christmas. And Christmas in Ghana, everybody's traveling, everybody's doing something, there's parties, there's cousins who live outside of Ghana who come down, and they're getting dressed and you're sitting there looking at them like, where's my paracetamol? So it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable. Being sick and also watching everybody else have fun while you're sick. I'm not a hater, but I'm just saying, But I realized I came to an impasse. I had a choice, okay? I can continue to be miserable, feel sorry for myself, or I can take advantage of the downtime and rise strong, right? I could completely, we all know self-pity. What does self-pity say? Give me an example of what self-pity sounds like.
Everyone else is happy and I'm just here and nobody cares. Mm-hmm. Nobody even wants to ask me how I'm doing.
Yeah. Everybody else but me. It must be only me. Me. And I remember when, early on when and usually I don't really get sick much. And so when I do, people in my life don't really believe me. They're kind of like, oh girl, But I remember calling my brother and I was like, can I borrow your, the humidifier? Because they had just had a baby. I was like, I think I'm coming down with something. Can I borrow the humidifier? And he was like, hell no, girl, it's for my baby. And I was like, okay. And so it was later on that he actually came to visit me because I literally was not going to work or anything. He's like, okay, well, I heard you're sick. I was like, I tried to tell you. Anyway, he came over and he was like, okay, let's go. I'm taking you to the hospital. Right? It was him that, but that self-pity in that moment was kind of like, oh, I see. Okay, so you're not going to give me this humidifier. Okay, you want me to die? You can, it's like you can work on your brain and go there, and it was like, okay, I can continue to be miserable, which is perfectly easy. Okay, that's the easy route. And I don't blame anybody for taking the easy route because choosing to heal is not, it's painful. Choosing to go down that road, I would not lie to you, vulnerability is not easy. But it is the most painful but most beautiful experience of life. I mean, I imagine that's how childbirth is, right, Ebony? Just the most physically tasking experience, but so much beauty comes from that moment. So if you ever have this choice, please don't choose to go the easy route just because it's easy, because trust me, or else you get sick over Christmas and have to watch everybody have a good time except you. I'm not threatening, but I'm just saying. Okay, so let's move on. So, so while I was down, I finally picked the book back up. I was like, okay, girl, I guess I gotta read you. Like actually read you, not like read. But like, you know, I had to take this book again and realize that where I struggled was self-acceptance. Like that was my operating sort of mindset that needed to be crushed in order for me to begin to really show up for myself and see myself, right, as worthy. Mine was self-acceptance, and of course, mixed in, it was a little cocktail, self-acceptance and self-worth. But these are all on a spectrum, whether self-love, self-worth, self-acceptance, it's all in a spectrum. But we all have sort of the points that we need to navigate. For me, it was self-acceptance. But it was a cocktail of a few things that I needed to work on. But I came to that realization, I came to that point. And so this is what I did. I read The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. If you don't know who she is, I really think you should check out her work. Her research is incredible. She's been researching shame and authenticity for the last 30 years. I got a therapist. Still talk to her to this day, right? I paid more attention to my spirituality, and what I mean was that I, spent less time thinking about. Okay, I feel like I need to get realer. So, I've struggled a little bit with church culture in Ghana, personally, right? Nothing against going to church, nothing against Christianity, but I struggled a little bit with it. And my struggle with it was just this idea that I had to show up perfect every single Sunday. And meeting a lot of people and not knowing them, not having any connection with them, except how I looked on that, which I felt, my experience in my particular church, this was my experience. And so I began to spend and pay attention to my spirituality and say, okay, if I am Christian, it can't just be manifest in terms of having a cute outfit on Sunday. I need to understand the person of Jesus, the teachings, in a deeper, more spiritually connected way. So spend more time on my spirituality. And I began to reach out to people who I felt were showing up for themselves and were seeing the benefits. Whether it was people I knew personally or whether it was Oprah. It doesn't actually have to be people you know, right? There are people doing the work out there. And what we have to do is decide that they are our friends. So Oprah, hey girl, how you doing? Open her podcast, right? And have that conversation with the people who are making the changes and who are showing up for themselves, right? And are being fully present. So, worksheet time. Okay. So the second question, we're going to skip the first question for now. The question comes later, but I put it up there because it's very important for your own sort of revision when you go back to have that at the top of your page. But on the worksheet, the second question says, what area of personal growth can you identify as needing work? Sorry. So I put 3 boxes, but it doesn't have to be like 3 things. I just think, So what areas of personal growth can you identify as needing work? For me, it was self-acceptance with the side of self-worth, side of self-love. It was a cocktail of a few things. All right, so think through some areas that require some work. So that's one of my areas. And still working on being vulnerable, believe it or not. And working on this resting bitch face, but that's another conversation.